All right, we're on the North Central Plains page, and I will be reading through the information. Follow along, press pause at any time if you need to, and you can skip ahead, go back, whatever. So, geography and climate. The geography and climate of the North Central Plains is extreme. It experiences long, hot summers and short but incredibly cold winters. It receives some rain, which allows for Native Americans to do some farming. The two primary tribes living in the North Central Plains were the Caddo and the Wichita tribes. Because they both lived in the same region with the same climate and geography, they shared very similar lifestyles, cultures, and customs. Continue reading below to learn more about the Caddo and Wichita tribes. So if you scroll down now, scroll, we'll start with the Caddo. Caddo. The Caddo Indians were a large group of native tribes spread across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Their full name was Caddo-Hadacho, which became shortened to Caddo by the French who met them. The Caddo people built large, dome-shaped grass houses. They used the grasses and the trees of North and East Texas to build their homes. These permanent homes could stand 50 feet tall. Many people lived in one home with beds around the wall and a fire pit in the middle. The Caddo people settled in small communities. They made ceramic pots for cooking and storing food. They were successful farmers who grew crops known as the Three Sisters. These crops were corn, beans, and squash. They were called the Three Sisters because they grew so well together. The Caddo were primarily sedentary, living and working on their farms. They built them near major rivers, like the Red River between modern-day Texas and Oklahoma. They developed advanced and sophisticated societies and held ceremonies for important occasions. They built large mounds of earth for these celebrations. The Caddo were mostly peaceful, forming alliances and building relationships with other tribes in different regions. The Caddo would trade with these other tribes. They traded bison hides, bows and arrows, turquoise, pottery, and shells. Now, if you keep looking at that bottom, at the image carousel, you see you can click left or right on the pictures. If you start with the first picture, you see a picture of a bunch of Native American men building one of their huge grass houses. You can see how tall it is just by looking at how tall the people are. If you click to the right, you see a picture of the Three Sisters. That's the corn is the tall part growing up. The beans are the darker leaves that wrap around the corn, so the beans climb up the corn stalk. And the squash is at the bottom, kind of stabilizing all of it. So they grew really well together. The next picture is a Caddo man with face paint on. The next picture is a picture of a Caddo man and a Caddo woman standing in front of their home. The Caddo man is holding a knife rather menacingly. Who knows what he's going to do there? I don't know. Here is a Caddo pot, and there's artwork on the Caddo pot. And then last is a picture of a Caddo man wearing a headdress with a bird's head on it, and he has facial jewelry on. So there we go. That's all for the Caddo. Now, if you scroll back up, scroll, you'll see the Wichita. So we're at the Wichita. If you want, you can take this time to pause, go over to your assignment in the Google Classroom that goes with this, assignment B, and take the notes on the Caddo, and complete the part on the Caddo. So if you want to do that, push pause now. If you're not doing that, or whenever you come back, hit play, and let's continue with the Wichita. The Wichita Indian tribe was composed of several different groups of families and communities who shared a similar language and culture. When many groups come together to form an alliance or a partnership, it's called a confederacy. The Wichita called themselves the Kitish. Kitty Katish, or the raccoon-eyed people, because they often tattooed the skin around their eyes. The Wichita were hunters and farmers. They farmed many vegetables, including the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters, as we know before, were corn, beans, and squash, and we know that they were called the Three Sisters because they grew very well when planted together. The Wichita Indians lived in large dome-shaped houses, similar to the Caddo. These houses were also made of grasses, tree bark, and poles. These homes were movable if necessary, but usually the Wichita stayed near their farms, and if they needed to hunt, hunting parties would go out and then return to the village. Now, if you look at the bottom, you'll see another image carousel. The first picture says food of the Wichita tribe. And it says they ate beans, corn, melons, and squash. They also ate deer and buffalo. They were all natural foods that they grew or caught themselves. You click ahead, you see some hunting tools, bows and arrows, and like axes. Next, you see an image of basically a Caddo community or a Wichita community where there's a woman drying out some animal skin. There's people in the back that look like they're cooking something. You see some teepees, so these must have been the Wichita that were off on a hunting party because many of the Wichita lived in the homes similar to the Caddo. Next, we see the Three Sisters. We've seen them before. Here we see a modern-day Caddo ceremony where the men and women are all dressed in very beautiful clothing. Then we see one of the Caddo homes made of grasses and poles. See how tall it is? Next is a Caddo man, and you see why they're called raccoon people, because he painted his face red and he painted the skin around his eyes black, like a raccoon. And we're back to the beginning. So that is all on this page. Take some time to go to your assignment B, complete the notes on the Caddo and the Wichita, and for my advanced kiddos, make sure you answer the questions below the notes. And when you're ready, come back and go to the next page, which is the Coastal Plains.